All right, you are now tuned into the Rotated Views podcast, episode number 30. All right, guys, so we made it 30 episodes deep. Wow, I can't believe we're actually here. It's to me, it's pretty impressive. To me, it's a goal that to be honest with you, we didn't even have, I guess, like the forethought or the vision that wasn't that big in the beginning. To be honest with you, we just wanted to record a first 20 episodes and kind of take it from there. We kind of wanted to see where we were with it. And so here we are 10 weeks later after our 20th episode. We're here with episode number 30, and I am happy. I'm excited. I am more energized than ever, and I believe for every 10 episodes that we have, I will, kind of redo one of these reflection podcasts where we kind of think things through, kind of reflect on what we've been through in the past 10 episodes, because it's kind of 10 episodes means that's about 2.5 months. We shoot an episode once a week. So, every 2.5 months, I kind of want to sit down and reflect with you guys, whether it's just me by myself or me or me and someone else, or just an overall different kind of setup. But for this specific one, it just seemed kind of special to me. Number 30, I've been wanting to kind of record something where it was just me for 30 episodes now. And to be honest with you, I've been kind of holding back with the whole thing just because I wanted to make certain that we were coming across a specific way. And I actually think we superseded our expectations. And believe it or not, all 5 members of the crew are still here, still alive, still vibrant, still excited. And that's the cool thing about the Rotated Views podcast. We're very open with each other. We're very laid back, non-judgmental. Yes, we joke because there's edits that get involved with our recordings. But to be honest with you, it's not that much. In the beginning, it was a lot of edits because we were just horrible. Not to say that we're anything great at this time right now, but when we first started, when I mean horrible, it had nothing to do with the content. It was really no one really knew how to express themselves without feeling restrained or whatever. So now the guys are actually talking without holding back. So yes, that took us about 30 episodes, but now you're getting to kind of see, the personalities. You're kind of seeing people open up. You're getting to know us more, which makes it super exciting. One of the cool things about the podcast is what you guys don't realize is I'm learning just as much from the guys as you are. Yes, these are my brothers and cousins and close friends, but there's stuff that, like, topics we would have never talked about. That's the cool thing about the podcast, is it brings about topics that regular life, never called for. So now we're touching on topics because we want their specific opinion, which is the whole point of the Rotated Views podcast. This was a discussion me and my buddy Gabe, who originally had this idea packed away, in the back burner for about a year now, was I wanted the opinion of other people. And going back when I actually first met Gabe, this is basically what we did, right? We would kind of just get around, joke around, but then we would talk about really cool, interesting topics that we would jokingly say, this should get recorded or we should record it. And a lot of these conversations was between, me and my buddy Gabe, because I was doing a separate project, for my own brand, and he was doing his own thing, and we were kind of keeping each other accountable, I guess. Same thing with my buddy Scott, who I've mentioned several times and we'll have on the podcast here soon. But we would have these fascinating conversations. We call them masterminds, we call them accountability calls, whatever you want to, name them. The point is, we're keeping in contact with our peers and getting a constructive criticism from them. And the information, the golden nuggets that were being dropped were just too good to not be captured. So that's really the real reason behind the podcast. Now, we also wanted to drop those gems and have other people's opinions on them. So that's where the crew came in. So we're talking about various topics, but then we get the opinion, we get the perspective of a well-rounded group of guys, I feel like. And so sometimes we kind of sway away from the subject and kind of veer off into just strange tangents. But for the most part, this is a very low level, I guess, version of personal development. And the reason why I say that is because if anyone knows me, they know that personal development is my passion. Well, let's put it this way. If you've listened to one episode of the Rotated Views, you would quickly realize that personal development is my passion. Now, that being said, I will say we have talked about topics that have nothing to do with specifically personal development or self-help or anything like that. But we are, it is funny, helpful information. So that, yes, there are some episodes where we kind of keep it lighthearted. And to be honest with you, I just didn't want to have every single episode, hammering people with all this information and being that guy, at the top of the staircase, waving his finger around. Because let's get one thing straight. When I'm talking, this is what I tell the guys, and this is what I say to my partners all the time. When they ask me for my opinion on something, I always tell them, think about this. As much as I'm saying it to you and towards you, because it's the advice that you're asking me for, I'm saying it to myself. I'm not like I don't try to pretend to be, some person, some guru in personal development and is, telling people what to do because I know what's best. I don't. I'm just giving you my spin on life. I'm just giving you my perspective. Whatever you do with that information that I drop, that's totally on you. And that you should take that with anything and everything basically you hear. You should be the accumulation of all the information that has been gathered and synthesized in your mind, right? So you shouldn't just be, so single-minded where you're listening to one person, right, all the time and living a life of a robot. And, there should be a pause and a note that should be made at that point where, yes, there are specific times where seeking out mentorship and listening to a coach for specific instructions, yes. But what I'm saying is, in every aspect of life, you have to gather little bits and pieces of life and whatever that may be. You have to reflect and think about them and put them together and allow them to make sense for you. This is why episode 30, I kind of wanted to just sit back and just really just talk to you, right? Like real talk. Like let's have this conversation where none of us here are perfect. None of us here are have it all figured out. But we can figure it out together. We can at least try to figure it out, right? We shouldn't abandon ideas or abandon each other based on past performances, right? We can use those performances, we can use those results as stepping stones to then get to where we need to be. That's the whole point of reflection, is to help you grow. Because if you continue to doing the same thing and continue to fail at something, but you're not switching anything up, you're constantly just doing the same thing over and over and over, that's insanity in its definition, right? So you have to figure out a point. You have to say, stop, hold on. All right. Even if you're getting great results, at one point, it's not always going to go uphill. So the fact that you are stopping every once in a while to really just sit back and think about what life has provided for you in this entire experience, whether it's good or bad, that's called appreciation, right? That's called being grateful for being alive, not just flying through things, like a madman without, stepping back and slowing down and smelling the roses, right? To me, that's not someone who's appreciative of life. If you don't reflect on things, right? Some people are like, oh, we're just reminiscing about, high school days or college days, blah, blah, blah. I love when I hear people say that. Now, I don't like either when people just live in the past either. There's a really big difference. Perfect example with this podcast, after the past, 29 episodes, we're not living in the past, right? Like I'm not giving you content that or a performance that's as low level as I am now, right? As low level as it was before, I should say. Sorry. Hopefully I have improved. Hopefully the podcast has improved. Hopefully our content and the way we're delivering the content has improved. Our statistics show that we are indeed improving. One of the exciting things I wanted to announce was that we have our first sponsor, right? Our first sponsor, audible.com, right? It was such a perfect sponsorship because I actually use the Audible app. I actually have some of my favorite personal development books on Audible. And this is a free plug for them anyway, for, just stepping up and believing in us and having faith in us and that they really believe that we're quote unquote influencers and that we can help them in this kind of really cool relationship that they reached out to us and said, basically, we enjoy the topics that you're talking about. We enjoy your content. We feel that you have a very specific influence. Let's partner up and figure this out. That being said, if they heard our first 2 episodes, right, that we sure as anything wouldn't have got a sponsorship. Number one, it's too early in the game. You don't know. Results are there's really no results to even look at, to be honest with you. You have to go through it. And even now, people would say you need like hundreds of episodes for you to get like real sponsorship. And we didn't know that entering. We just went for it. But I'm saying all that to say this. Every single episode we have improved. Whether you guys realize it or not, or whether you guys even see it or not. Some people might say, you guys sound like you got worse. Or your topics went in a different direction. Listen, our topics are going to the feedback that we're receiving from the audience. So we're kind of just, feeling our way through this thing, kind of like in the dark. And our audience is kind of guiding us and telling us, where's the, what direction to go. And we're just trying to navigate that way. Obviously, we're still in the beginning stages. If they tell us you need hundreds and hundreds of episodes to be, something, of great, I don't even know, just like a great podcast. Listen, we were ranked in the top 10 in our category, right? We were ranked in the top 150. We got as high as the top 20 or 25 or something like that overall. You got to realize there's over, I don't even know what the number is at this point, but I'm going to guess like 300,000 podcasts, right? And we're basically we're at the upper one half. I don't even know how to even put percentages together, but we're at the top 1%. Let's just keep it that way, because my brain, I can't even do percentages in my head. You don't need to be smart to do any of this stuff. But anyway, what I was trying to say was we've grown. Like our first episode, we weren't ranked, right? Our second and third and fourth episode, we were not ranked. Okay. But then I think it was like by our 7th episode, we got our first ranking. Like it was kind of bizarre. And I don't know if that was just from, the buzz that we were creating or, like word getting around. And I don't know how that happened, honestly. But it did. And it got us excited. And I'm very happy to say 30 plus weeks later, the same crew is here. We're still delivering content. We're still excited. Like if you guys can come here, right, at the studio and listen and watch really and observe what's really going on and actually witness the true chemistry that's between this bond of brothers, right? You would appreciate the Rotated Views podcast that much more. Now, moving on. If you can reflect on the past, right? Or whether it was mistakes or whether it was success, it doesn't matter. The fact that you can reflect on it, then use that new knowledge and apply it, right, to your life. You are now hitting new stages of growth. You have expanded your mind. You have expanded your thinking. You have expanded the way you see the world. And that alone, it should be enough reason why one should reflect. Okay? So moving on from reflection should be action, right? So now you should take action on your new found knowledge. You should start applying the new things that you've learned from yourself, because we all know those people who study. I was one of those people who I would study my eyeballs off and had all this information, but was never applying what I learned. I didn't even know what I was doing wrong, right? So if I brought you into my office, you would quickly notice my collection of books, right? Specifically my collection of personal development books, which is 95% of my books. The other 5% are some very strange, random, weird stuff, and you're going to just have to ask the other guys on the podcast of the kinds of books that are there. And it's just kind of funny, really. But anyway, I'm a weirdo like that. But I have all these books, and I'm not even kidding you. I've read the majority of these books. If you came into my office, right, you would be like, dude, did you really read all these books? And at one point I started cracking up. I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Yes, I read all these books, and it's amazing, right? And I took that as like a trophy, right? And I did. I really did. And they said, wow, and then it was kind of like, and I felt like in the back of their mind, they're like, you are like nowhere in life where I think you should be with after someone who read this many books. And then I started like looking around. I'm like, what is going on actually? Because I definitely have a brain full of all this knowledge. And if you follow my blog, Jimmylee.com, you'll quickly notice there's a lot of information on there, going back 2.5 years ago of very valuable information you could find. Wisdomminers.com or Jimmylee.com. Anyway, so then I start to think, I'm like, yeah, what? I must be doing something wrong. So what do? Go back to what I was doing. That wasn't a true reflection. That was kind of like, I stood back, I'm like, yeah, true, you're right. I didn't reflect on that. So what did I do? I went back to what I knew. I bought more books. I'm like, what am I doing wrong? I got to figure this out. So I started buying, more personal development books and trying to. Well, all I remember thinking, like in the back of my mind, was like, majority of these personal development books. First of all, half the books is a wash. Like off the bat, it's a wash. I would say, so half, that's 50. I would say another 45% is regurgitated information, right? So it's something that they already, you can find in another book. They just kind of twisted it into their own language, basically. And the last 5%, it could be newfound knowledge or an idea that you've never heard of, right? And I'm not even exaggerating, but for some reason, I just kept watching. And I think to me, it's, I'm a Christian. So to me, the Bible, every time I read it, and I know this is something totally different, but every time I read it, I find something different. But kind of in that same sense, I was reading all these new books, and it really was something different. I was getting a different perspective from each author, which if anyone tells you, when you read people's biographies, right, or watch like a bio on somebody, like like on YouTube or something, it's very interesting to see other people's perspective. And I think I was more attracted to that than getting new information. I don't know if that makes sense. right? So yes, I was reading all these new books, but in the back of my mind, I feel like I did know I was not necessarily going to learn a ton of new information, but kind of the information I already heard before, just packaged in a different way so that I can understand it and it maybe stick this time. I have no idea if that makes sense, but it was kind of like one of those things. It was like, just like, okay, so a perfect example is I'm into studying the stock market and stuff like that. So now one of my strategies is studying a person who is successful at something first, see how they did it first, and then on the back end also learn how to, the how-tos, get the books for dummies and the books for, for knuckleheads or whatever they're called at this point, and the basics, right? The 101s, these general introductory courses that'll give you, a basic foundation of whatever it is that you want to study. Okay. And then I start reading other people's biographies or watching other people, their success stories and things like that. That is what gets me motivated. That encourages me, right? Because here's the thing. Not everyone writes the same way. Not everyone's life story is the same, just flat out, period, right? So what I'm going to learn or pick up off one book or person is going to be totally different thing or aspect that I'm going to pick up from another. So I think that's what it was. And it wasn't that I wasn't applying. What I then came to a true reflection, I was actually asking myself after a while, saying, am I actually applying what I'm learning, right? And that's kind of what I want to, get to the, bring home here. Are you applying what you're learning? You're listening to all these podcasts. You're reading all these books. You're trying to improve. So are you actually applying what you learn? So when you're reflecting, are you sitting back and like, yeah. I know what to do from here on out. Dude, it's fantastic that you have a library. Dude, it's fantastic that you listen to podcasts every single day that that are teaching you how to make money from home and how to improve. Dude, it's fantastic that you're in school. I love that. I truly do. I'm happy that you're trying to improve yourself. But the key is applying what you learned. We had an episode titled Knowledge is Power. It was kind of one of those things where my whole point was knowledge is not power. Applied knowledge is power. So going back from the beginning is realizing where you are, reflecting on your progress, and now taking action. That's where you should be, right? So for our podcast, we're here now on episode 30. We have reflected multiple times, just time in and time out. If you saw our itinerary I have them all here. If you ever to visit one time, just ask to see them. I'll gladly show you. We'll sit here and laugh together. It's almost like a comic book, to be honest with you. The first one was horrendous. And not to say, again, I always say this because we're constantly improving. We're constantly trying to sharpen up. We're constantly trying to deliver the best, most efficient and effective information to our audience as possible, because we appreciate everyone who listens to the podcast. We appreciate everyone who takes out the time of their busy schedules to try to improve themselves, or at least hopefully we're lightening up your day, right? Because I know some of our topics aren't so serious. Some of our topics, for example, episode number 29 is on food, and we're literally just talking about the foods that we eat and etc. So I just want to apply all those things. So when you look at our itinerary, right, from episode 1 to 29, you'll quickly see even the setup of everything, the way it's printed out. So we basically have these one pagers. When I first started, we had like multiple pages, or it was just super confusing. Actually, a kind of funny story is one of like our first recorded episode that like no one would ever hear. Well, two funny stories. Our first recorded episode that we recorded as a group, as the entire cast, where it's Goose, Heck, Manny, and Gabe, myself. We didn't have a topic. We just started talking because like I was trying to tell you guys before, we were going off the concept of, when we're basically just hanging out with each other, smoking cigars and just, talking about life. So I felt I was going to try to imitate or, recreate that atmosphere, but it just wasn't the same. It was very forced. But if you would have heard the conversations, it's just funny as anything. 'Cause, dude, it was straight up nonsense. I don't even know what we were even talking about, but all you saw was just like people like, the guy's just staring at the microphone, like inspecting everything that's going on. We're looking at each other. No one's saying anything. Then I would say something random and no one would respond or give feedback on it. Or, Heck or Mike will say something and we're just all staring at each other and like, where did that come from? Well, let's all be honest. It was completely disorganized. We didn't even know where we were going with this thing. And it was really a test to kind of see where we, what the possibilities were. Some people might do that and it might make sense for that little group of people. That might take off and that might just be their thing. For us, it's just not like that. Like, as much as I would love to have said, yeah, we just like freestyled that whole thing and it was absolutely amazing. Like me right now, like I can just go on and just straight up talk, hopefully delivering valuable content to you guys, but not when it comes to in a group setting. I am very reserved. I'm trying to hold back because I want you guys to hear more of the crew and not less of me, but when it comes time wise, yes, less of me. But when I do speak, I want it to be a punch, right? So they call that filler. When you're just trying to just like fill up time and you're just like talking like blah, 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 you're just saying stuff. I want to, when I'm saying something, I just want to, like it being basically like a haymaker, just like throwing punches, like boom, 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 just, just knocking people out. Not just, one jab here, one jab there. That's why we have this combination with the crew. Now, moving past action, I want to talk to you guys really. The beyond all that was earlier today. For some reason, I was in a meeting and I don't disrespectfully doodle in meetings. I kind of like I'm like writing my thoughts down. Sometimes it might turn into like me doing some kind of weird graffiti or like drawing circles, but it gets my mind going. Right. So some people like to fidget. Some people like to like, I don't even know. People do different things. Me personally, I'm doodling on a piece of paper, whether it's taking notes or, just, drawing something just to, get my thoughts to start flowing naturally and really processing information. So while I was in the middle of a meeting, I found myself doodling. And a lot of times, 99% of the times, I catch myself and I just stop, kind of laugh, I guess it's borderline childish, but for me, that's literally how I process information. It's not if someone ever saw that and felt that way or thought that, it really is not a disrespect. I don't know. That's how I operate. It's such a natural thing. I don't know. I couldn't tell you. And if it is a bad thing, I don't know. Maybe I'll, someone should probably tell me and I'll do more to, slow it down. But I noticed I was writing like acronyms. I don't even know how it started. Anyway, so I wrote FAW and what it was standing for was find a way. But I wrote find the way and then I was just writing, FAW. And then that's how like my doodles go. They just go from one thing to another. You're just like, what in the world did I just draw or what's going on here? So that is how we became the Rotated Views podcast in general, but more specifically how we got to episode 30, right? Like I sat down with, someone tonight and they said, oh man, I can't wait till I'm done school because I just want to live, your life, man, the way you have it. And I'm just thinking, I didn't say anything, but in the back of my mind, I'm like, you don't even know what I do. You don't even know how hard I work. You don't even know what my schedule is. We don't have that kind of relationship where, he would know. So that's the reason why I didn't get mad or I even said anything. But it's kind of funny how people just think like, they're so wrapped up in their own lives that they think they're the hardest worker on the planet, or they think they're going through the hardest thing ever, right? So that being said, we just found a way where they told us it was impossible, right? They said, oh, you need all this equipment. You need all this knowledge. You need all this experience. We just found a way. When they told us, you need to get approved. You need to talk about a specific niche. You need to talk about, professionals and interview professionals. Everyone was always kind of like telling us what to do. And it wasn't that we weren't just like not listening. We just found and wanted to do something our way. And our way was the best for us. I'm not saying it's the best in general. It was the best fit for us. And that's also not to say that it's going to completely change in the future. This could be from here on out be all totally changed. I can't speak on that. I'm not a fortune teller. Anyway, we found a way. We found a way to get not only just the equipment that we needed, but we found the specific equipment that the top-notch, podcasters have their hands on. And I'm not talking about price, and I'm not talking about things like that. I'm just saying we got the right stuff. That's what I'm trying to say. When it came to episode content, episode length, right? We found a way how we can fit everyone's personality into our podcast. How we can find how we can use the tools that we do have to make it happen, right? It's like Manny always, we heard her saying, I think we're like at, like, I don't know, like we were in a class or somewhere together and someone had said whatever it takes. And Manny took that to heart, and it became really like, his motto when we were going through college, during our college days when we're at Temple University. His thing was whatever it takes. And it's kind of the same thing, find a way, whatever it takes. A lot of times we are our own limits. We are the excuse. We make excuses for ourselves. When people told me you can't put an album out, you have to be an artist, you have to have background, you have to have marketing, you have to have distribution. I didn't even know. Honestly, I didn't even know what people were talking about. I didn't even know what any of that meant. All I knew was I wanted to, release an album, a spoken word album that had uplifting beats and was basically me in the background motivating somebody, motivating that one person, whoever it was. If they were listening, I just want to motivate them to become the best version of themselves. And the motivation files is out now against all odds, right? But I found a way. I found someone to make the music. I found someone to produce it, right? I found a time to do it with, I have a professional career outside of all this stuff, outside of blogging, outside of doing a podcast, outside of writing a book, outside of studying trading, the stock market, outside of everything else that I do. There's so many other aspects to my life. That's what frustrated me about that conversation with that guy today, because he just saw that, he was in a rut, let's just say, right, and could not wait to finish school, but. And I do appreciate that, because it is, it is a difficult, time, but that should not give you any thought or reason to kind of, shut down or I guess belittle someone else's life as if what they're doing is no significance, and I'm not saying that, just to poke at somebody. I'm just saying, like, because I've done that too. It's not like like an individual thing, right? Like an individual person. I'm just giving you that example, but I feel like we've all done that we're so wrapped up in our own mess, right? That we kind of look at people like, yeah, so what? You don't have to do what I do, right? You're not going, what's so hard about your life? You don't have to pay, mortgage and tuition and car loans and all this other debt and work 5 jobs. And we get so wrapped up in that we become careless. We become, jaded with life almost. I just by me saying that, I'm just saying, do whatever it takes. Like, the reason why that bothered me, because that was semi-excuse-ish, and I just totally made that word up. But it's like that person is kind of coming up with an excuse as to not being the best version of themselves, is the best way I can put that. They were self-limiting, really, in their thinking, physically and mentally. It was constant excuses as to why they couldn't do certain things. Now, that's not to say what they're doing isn't difficult. I'm not saying that, and it totally is. And what that person experiencing is, it's just a patch. It's just the belly of their story, like I like to say. But while you're going through that, don't be so wrapped up and involved in it that you can't even appreciate other people's hard work. Like, it was the way it was, the conversation went was like, I'm working so hard, no one's topping how hard I'm working, and what you're doing is just nothing compared to me in my life and what I'm going through. It is so difficult, right? And I totally blew it off purposely, not to mess up the conversation is what I'm trying to say. I didn't want to like drag on like, oh, well, what do you think you think I just sit at home and do nothing? But I kind of knew it. I've been there. I'm just saying, don't be that guy, right? People go through things. Don't act like you're the only one who's going through things. It is really what I'm trying to say. But because you know why? Because that's just an excuse. When I'm talking about whatever it takes, when I'm talking about finding a way, this is what I mean. Because you have to be able to dodge those excuses and find yourself back in that line, in that zone. Go back to that. Forget the excuses. Who cares? Dude, life is not going to be that straight arrow up how much people want it to be. It just will never be that. So understand that problems, obstacles, courses, all that kind of stuff has to happen. It will happen. So don't get bent out of shape or make it an excuse. Make it your reason, right? And what I should have been talking about prior to all that was finding your why. If you knew why, you would have already had known. Once you got past that reflection part and you started taking action, your why should have been dropped and inserted right at that point with the action, because now your action is going to be stepped up to a whole nother level. When you took that action, then you're doing whatever it takes. It's because of your why, right? So that's how this all kind of connects. So when you find your why, and you discover it while you're taking action, that's kind of like your fuel. That's what's going to get your engine going. So when we were reflecting on the podcast, here we are, episode 30. When we were reflecting on the podcast, we were inserting the reason why we started this whole thing, and it kept going back that we just wanted to capture valuable conversations. So we didn't know where this was going to go. So we literally said, let's do 20 episodes. Again, here we are in episode 30. We've set new goals. Don't get me wrong. I was just trying to give you guys a perspective and trying to get you guys to see where we were coming from when this whole thing started. And that's part of, reflection. So knowing our why and you inject it into that action, that's going to catapult you to another level because you already had reflected. So, right. So you're down. So now you're out of gas, right? When you had to stop and reflect and you're just like, oh my gosh, I'm just so tired. But then when you're reflecting back, right. And you're switching some things up and you're changing around the game plan and trying to improve on what you already have, on the results that you have. Then you add in gas. So you put gas, which is your why. You put that into your tank, right? Now you're going to take the action and you're going to take off. So now you should be at this point moving at higher levels. We should not limit, our challenges, right? We should challenge our limits, right? Don't be afraid of mistakes. Mistakes are just proof that we're trying, right? And the best way to predict the future is to create it. And that's what you're doing when you're taking this kind of constructive action, right? Because you have the why, you have the reflection, you have the experience, right? Because that's what you were reflecting on. That was the past. So you have all these components. This is bringing it all together. And that's the reason why we catapulted didn't even realize it, from episode 20 to 30. And it seemed like it happened so fast. And that's why I kind of want to sit down, slow down, and kind of talk to you guys and kind of give you, the mindset behind it all and where we are, at this point. I kind of want to show kind of like the mental, kind of give you like drop you guys down inside the brain of the rotated views. And that's just a simple concept. That's just, it's specific. It's the truth. It's real. And in hopes really that someone can hear this and grow from it or learn from it and apply what we're saying, right? So when you have this can-do attitude, that's one thing that you have to constantly reflect. That's almost a daily basis reflection, right? So you go back to this I can, I will thing. So, and you're in the middle of the action, and then another obstacle, right? So now you're brand new, right? Because you went through all that stuff that we just previously talked about, but now you come up against your first obstacle after going through all that reflection, after going through all that action, after going through all that, you knowing your why and previous experience, and you hit your first obstacle. This is why you have to have a very strong reason for doing what you're doing. At most point, this all has to do with episode 30. And the reason why is because the only reason why we are here is because we had a reason why. We felt the need that people wanted to hear this. We were touching lives. We were inspiring and motivating people to become better versions of themselves, not only from my previous products, but in the combination of and allowing people to come into my life on a personal level through the Rotated Views podcast. Because that's basically what it is. You're hearing childhood stories. You're hearing stories that you would have never heard had it not been for the Rotated Views podcast. So now this is the reason why, because they had told us that, the average podcaster who, the person who starts a podcast doesn't even reach episode 10. That's where episode 20 came from. They said the average person doesn't reach episode 10. So I looked at Gabe and I started laughing. He's like, what? I'm like, well, first of all, I'm not average. Second of all, I'm going to double that. We're going to go to 20. We're going to go to 20 episodes. That's where the number 20 came from. Right. And then so much has been going on since then that I didn't even realize 10 episodes just came through, because we're literally having fun. We're at the point where we're legitimately having fun. We know each other. We know kind of have the cues. Oh, that was the other thing that you guys don't really get to see is like we kind of waving each other off like in the middle of the podcast, or giving each other these signs like move closer to the mic or speak up or stop talking, take the gum out your mouth, just random stuff that we're here cracking up laughing, but it's experience. It's giving us background for maybe one day we can use that to stand on a much bigger stage. And it's all these little things that we're learning, even coming down to the equipment. We're laughing at some of the equipment that we have, and guys, we're talking this is all under a year, and we have a lot of experience when it comes to the podcast, only because we literally had zero knowledge of it prior to starting. So it wasn't like, oh yeah, wow, he's under a year and these, oh yeah, they know it all. Believe me, we haven't scratched the surface. We have a lot to learn. We have not even come close to where we could be. And that's all in the detail. And that's why I wanted to stop and do this specific episode 30 for you guys. To maybe you are at a point in life right now where you just need to slow down, stop, hold everything up, relax. Let's think this through. Let's talk, right? Let's talk about this. You need to chill out for 1 minute. Just wait. Grab a hold of yourself and reflect on what you are doing. Reflect on what you have been through. Reflect on what's actually going on, because I just don't want a bunch of people out there being robots. We have to begin to start thinking for ourselves, taking action on what we truly want to do in life, actually capitalizing on the gift of life itself, using the tools that are actually around us. That was the biggest thing with the Motivation Files, the album, right? Motivation to Master Your Day. I literally used everything, all of my resources. I used every single thing that I had around me, because I didn't have the capital to get the highest level of resources. So I literally used what I had around me. Now, that was very, very difficult. because it slowed the process down. But what it didn't slow down was my thought process. It sharpened my thought process. It allowed me to become more creative. So that's what I want you guys to do now. If you're going through something, you just kind of feel like you're a robot. You're just going through the motions. You're in a rote routine. I just want you to just stop and truly reflect and think about it. Remember why. Why are you doing this? Is it to put the roof over your kid's head? Is it to put clothes on your back, food on a table? Is it to hit a certain financial status? Is it to become debt free? Is it to become financially independent? I don't know. Whatever your goal is, I just want you to stop for you to remember it, right? Because sometimes we don't have someone to tell us, okay, what in the world are you doing this for anyway? Like, why are you busting your tail day in and day out and complaining about Mondays and complaining about your boss and complaining about your employees and complaining about, the day just in general? Just why are you doing that? Because that just goes to show at a certain point, at some extent, every situation is different, that you're not grateful. You're not appreciative of what life has thrown you. And once you start hitting those hard, those walls, that's telling you right there, you need to stop and slow down, reflect. Something got to change, right? It's not the right way. The right way is always smooth. You ask a person, a professional baseball player, and they tell you when they hit a home run, it is effortless. They feel like it's effortless. They don't even feel the bat, hitting the ball, but hit a single or bunt the ball, and the bat is like vibrating so much it kind of hurts your hands or whatever. And obviously those two hits are two totally different results. So life is telling you that's really life giving you feedback. Perfect example is like if they're always walking around, their backs are hurting. It might be, this is not all the time, again, this situation. I'm just trying to give you a very basic example that your back is always hurting. It might just mean that you're a slouch. Like you got to straighten up and fix your posture, right? Or maybe you just got to go to the chiropractor and get adjusted or whatever. But it's your body giving you feedback. It's the same way when we're experiencing walls in life. You have to stop and reflect on what is being done or what you're experiencing and how you can change it. And this is where accountability partners, mentorship, and masterminds come in, because sometimes we're not always going to have the answer. I believe at some point, if you dig deep enough, you will have the answer. But to quicken up the process, it's fantastic to have these masterminds. It's fantastic to have these accountability partners, because that can speed up the process. So that's what we're doing here at the Rotated Views podcast. That's why I wanted to share that with you on a reflective note with episode 30, because I don't want you guys, even sometimes some people are listening to the podcast and they're missing segments. Why? Because they're listening to the Rotated Views podcast on a simple route, only for a simple routine, as like driving into work. So sometimes, yes, you're driving to work. Yes, you're listening to the Rotated Views podcast, but your mind is somewhere else while you're driving or while you're doing whatever you're doing. You're not really listening. So you're really not paying attention to what's being said. So sometimes that's how life is. Sometimes we're not even realizing it. And when you have these reflective partners and these accountability partners, they can point at things that we're not seeing, that we're just blind to. When you have masterminds, you can generate brand new ideas. And then again, it's your job to apply this new knowledge. Remember, applied knowledge is power, right? Not just knowledge in general. I said this example before. You can go into the library, and it is in the, when you think about it, it is powerful with all the information, but it's all useless when the books never get opened, right? So just storing it is just not an effective way to live, right? So I just wanted to give you guys, drop you guys inside the brain of the Rotated Views podcast to let you kind of know where we are, where we're coming from, and now where we're headed. Where we're headed, we have, new sponsorships to come, right? New guests to come, and we are going to go through new test formats on content. So how we're delivering content and how the audience is reciprocating and giving us feedback and the kind of feedback that we're getting from that. And lastly, evolving into, I would say, a more dynamic group of podcasters. So those are their goals. The guys know what they are. We're set. We're ready to rock and roll. I want to take this episode and take an opportunity to thank you guys for listening to the podcast, for giving us a chance. Thank you to all the sponsors in the future that are willing to, give us a shot. Thank you to Audible that's currently is giving us a shot. I hope you guys enjoy the content that we are delivering to you guys. With that being said, putting a podcast together is not easy. There's a lot of work that goes into the final product to deliver to you guys. I'm not, it's not in any way, complaining, but I'm just saying it's not something where people just think it's like, you just go out there and just do it. Some people can. We have to plan for this stuff. We have to come up with the itinerary. There's a lot of editing involved because, it's just a lot of unnecessary content and I'm trying to make this the most powerful podcast as I can to come across in the most effective way that it can, so that my audience and our audience can become, again, the best versions of themselves and we can all grow together. This thing is in dire need of more feedback from our audience, and let us know what you want to hear and what your suggestions and recommendations are. We're open ears. We're excited to hear from you. We'd be more than happy to hear your suggestions. But with all that being said, I truly, genuinely, from the bottom of my heart, want to thank you guys for sticking around, for sharing our post and liking our post and downloading and subscribing. It all means so much to us because there's so much hard work that goes into the production of this entire project. And when we get, that's the only feedback that, excites me for the most part. It's just seeing that, people are loving it and smiling on somebody's face. I get text messages, phone calls, emails, comments talking about like, I was having a bad day, then I listened to the podcast. I was going through something in life and then I heard the podcast and it gave me the perfect solution to solve my issue. Just hearing that level of feedback is something beyond what we thought of in creating the Rotated Views podcast. Like I said, we're just trying to capture interesting conversation, and in doing so, we've somehow connected to the world in a unique way, and we just want to continue to do that. But as this episode talks about reflection, we want to improve day in and day out, podcast in, podcast out. So we got some new equipment to do some new things that are really cool and exciting for us. Get some new guests on here. And maybe in the future, I will tell you guys why we had limited the guest thing for our episodes. I'll save that until we actually have, guests on here regularly, because it's actually kind of funny. But anyway, so with that being said, I just want to thank you guys so much. I hope you can appreciate that this was a different tone of a podcast, but I just kind of want to give you guys, again, a different view and maybe tie some loose ends together where people had some questions as to, how everything is going and how we are at the current state. So with that being said, thank you guys. We appreciate you. Awesome. Guys, thanks again for joining us. The Rotated Views podcast was produced for self-development purposes. Huge shout out to our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by the Blessed Lifestyle brand. That is BL3SSED.com. Also sponsored by The Motivation Files Unleashed. This motivational mixtape will be your fuel for success. Available on all platforms. Guys, don't forget to visit the website, JimmyleeVelez.com. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Rotated Views. If you have any inquiries or questions, email us at info@JimmyleeVelez.com. On behalf of myself and the rest of the crew, we wish you massive success. Stay blessed.